Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. We have quite a few people joined already. We have quite a few more we're expecting to join, but we've got a lot to get through this morning, so we're going to get started. My name is Rob Snaith. I've recently joined the CCRI CSO, and I'll be your moderator this morning for this CCRI CSO webinar entitled Empowering Circular Change, Introducing the Updated CCRI Methodology for Cities and Regions. Like I say, thank you everybody for joining already, and we're just going to run through quickly what the scope and the agenda of this morning's webinar is going to be. So scope of the webinar, we're going to present the recent updates of the CCRI methodology. I imagine a lot of you in the audience will have been aware of the methodology as it's been developed, so we're just going to go through what the most recent developments are in that. We'll showcase the methodology added value, how that can help mobilize resources, engage stakeholders, and really drive the implementation of the circular solutions that we're trying to facilitate as part of CCRI. And we're also going to hear some feedback from a couple of specific pilots who have been using the methodology, and also invite feedback from everybody else in the audience as well, if you do have experience or questions on that. So that's the main scope of what we want to do today, and we'll move on to the agenda slide now, please. So yeah, starting off with these very quick opening remarks from me, and then we're going to pass over to Pierre Menger to chat us through how the methodology has developed over the years of its development. And then Marco Bianchi will get into the detail of what the latest version of the methodology looks like and what's in there. And then we'll have a presentation from Yanis Lambert on the CCRI self-assessment tool, which is referenced in the methodology, and obviously forms a major part of the steps towards being able to monitor and assess the progress of the circular solutions that the methodology tries to help develop. And then we have some time at the end for feedback and a question and answer session. And as I say, we have some specific pilots in the room who we'll invite to give their brief feedback on using the methodology, and we'll have those any questions from the audience as well. And then at 12 o'clock, or just before 12 o'clock, we'll pass back to Pierre to wrap up basically and chat about what the next steps for the methodology might look like. So that's all from me just now. Actually, no, sorry, we have a few very brief rules as well, apologies. So if everybody could please keep their cameras and microphones off, unless we invite you to take the floor and kind of field any of your questions. But we do want to hear from you, so please raise your hands, put questions in the chat as well, and then when we get to that question and answer session at the end of the webinar this morning, we'll be able to go through as many of those as possible. If there are any questions that we don't quite manage to get to today, then we will try to get back to people in writing separately as well. And the session is being recorded, as you see there. So if you prefer to remain anonymous, then please don't put your camera on, don't put anything in the chat, but the recording will be available afterwards for anybody else to come back to, and if you have any questions can come back to us on that, and also the slides from today will be shared after the session as well. So that is definitely it from me now, so without further ado I will pass you over to Pierre to get started. Thank you.
Hello, good morning everyone. My name is Pierre Menger. Can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm involved in the CCRI CSO since the go into the depths of the updates of the CCRI methodology. I wanted to go back, next slide please. I wanted to go back to the story a bit of how the methodology was created and actually how we went through a learning process. So everything started almost exactly 3 years ago in 2022 when we edited the first CCRI methodology and introduced it to the community also through a webinar. That time, the methodology was essentially based on literature review and some experience that we could gather in order to be able to establish this tiered approach of the methodology that we developed then later. At the start, this methodology we edited in 2022 was, as you can see, a very long document. It was rather dense, and although very conceptual, it also had some very technical content, which was needed, but also we saw later on that it might have been needed some adaptations later on. The methodology, when it was published in 2022, had different uses from the pilots, which were the primary public supposed to apply the methodology. So the pilots who joined the adventure in 2022 were making a different use of this methodology, because some of them were more or less advanced in their transition towards circular economy. So they had also different uses of it, but nonetheless, these kind of uses were very also interesting for us to learn on the process. In the beginning also, the methodology had also a very instrumental role between 2022 and 2025 of being used as a measure of progress of the pilots in their transitions towards implementing their circular systemic solutions. And then finally, it also had very little CCRI related content, because, as you know, everything was at the start. So a lot of CCRI actions, projects were not there yet. So we had to create that a little bit from scratch. Now the situation has changed. I will come back to this at the end. In 2024, after 2 years of implementation of the methodology, we decided to come back to the pilots and have their feedback on how they were using the methodology and what were maybe also points to be improved. And that feedback was very rich for us, because it really enabled us to see ways of improvement. And for example, as you can see on the slide, there was a general, let's say, criticism on the complexity, as I mentioned already before, compared to the target public the CCRI methodology is addressing, which is essentially, but not exclusively, but essentially public authorities at the regional or the local level. So indeed, the high complexity, the length, the details contained in the methodology is not maybe the best material to be sent and digested by such kind of stakeholders. So we had, let's say, a challenge to respond to this need or to this comment, and a little bit simplifying and making it in a language that speaks maybe more also to these kind of stakeholders. So a work of simplification, which meant also reducing the length. The first methodology was 160 pages long. We have now a version that is much shorter, and I also think more digestible for all types of publics. And then finally, also an issue that was raised many times in this feedback was the way of addressing the very essential and key theme in the methodology, which was funding. You will see today that we have integrated these aspects from the very beginning now of the methodology until the end. So we have come up with some solutions to issues that were raised in the feedback we have received. And then finally, also, besides the feedback we have received from the pilots, 3 years have passed. In the meantime, several initiatives have appeared and started, like CCRI projects, PDAs, the Community of Practice, which is another CCRI project directly linked to the CSO, and the Knowledge Hub. So the actors have increased, and also the material and the knowledge they are gathering and the practice that are collecting with their interactions with stakeholders are also enriching materials that we can integrate into the methodology. So this is also a very important procedure. And then we have also further partners joining in the last 3 years, like the OECD, the experiences gained by the pilots, their feedback to us on things that they were maybe struggling with the methodology and others that were working better, and other support activities like EIB C3 and Green Assist, who have assisted some pilots that we are following in the CCRI, and this experience also has helped us to improve also the content of some materials that we have in the methodology. So all these learnings on pilots and the growing community allows us to gain on maturity. And this is a process that will need to be repeated at the end of this first, let's say, CSO session, and hopefully also pursuing with CSO2 next year. We will need to still continue to improving this methodology, building on the feedbacks that we have from the CCRI community. So having said that, I hope you see now a little bit the story of the methodology over the 3 last years and how we came up with this updated that we will see now a bit in more details with Marco. So I hand over to you, Marco.
Thank you, Pierre, for your kind introduction. Let's see. So just one moment. Okay. So first of all, I would like to take a moment to reflect upon why we need a methodology in this context. So you already know that the circular transition is very complex. It is not always about a linear journey, and this complexity might be overwhelming. That is why we thought that having a methodology that gives us a framework, a structured framework, but yet adaptable to local context, is key for giving support to cities and regions in progressing towards circular economy. As Pierre already said, as the previous edition, this CCRI methodology provides essential steps, role, and structure to align a stakeholder view and commitment. And this is also a very important point. Within such diverse ecosystem as it is the CCRI, we also need a common language in order to understand each other. And therefore, the methodology, at least our aim, is that it acts as a lingua franca, so that everyone from different contexts can inform in a transparent way and coherent way, harmonized way on the progress, and enact this peer learning between different cities and regions. On the other hand, it is very important to keep in mind, to bear in mind what the methodology is not. So while I say that it is a framework adaptable to local needs and resources, it is not prescriptive. It is not one-size-fits-all process. You don't need to follow every step in the same way, and you can still adapt it to your local needs. Then I also say that it is a structured guide giving you phases, activities, milestones, and also with feature checklist. But it is not mandatory to complete every activity in strict order. The methodology is there to provide direction, not to lock you into a process. Another key role, as I said, is to enact a shared language across the CCRI ecosystem and beyond, therefore easing collaboration. But it is not a substitute for local decision-making. Decisions still need to be made locally with political ownership and stakeholder buy-in necessary. And finally, with this methodology, we would like to provide a resource hub with best practices, references, and practical insight. But it is not a final product. As Pierre said, it is an iterative tool, an iterative process that we hope will be further updated as learning and experience will increase. So now let's go into the content of the methodology. There is a little bit delay. Okay, so what's new in this version? So first of all, we did a stronger focus on the implementation. Now it is not anymore framed as activities, but instead as specific output. These are the stakeholder coordination plan, the Circular Economy Action Plan, and the Circular Economy Investment Plan. And I will touch upon this in a few seconds. Then we also feature an improved checklist. Now milestones are clearly linked to the mapping and design activities with guiding questions for each of them. And then also, in order to make kind of more friendly the methodology, we included several type of boxes: the did you know, further insight, and good practices, which we hope this make it rather straight to the point instead of long theoretical concept or argumentation. And finally, we also expanded on a key section. These are on governance of circular solution, then advisory services, mostly those coming from the PDA, the AC3, and the Green Assist program. And finally, also the indicator section. And we will see in a few seconds each of them how we have addressed it. Next slide. Okay, so the new focus on in implementation. As I mentioned earlier, the first edition of the CCRI methodology was much focused on the activities that should be oriented to implement the circular systemic solution. In this new edition, we kind of improved the implement section, focusing on the output that cities and regions should achieve once that they are ready to implement the circular systemic solution. These three outputs concern the financing of circular systemic solution, and you can find the inner circle, the planning, the intermediate circle, which end into the circular action plan, and finally the engaging process, which ends into the stakeholder coordination plan. So why we want to emphasize on this output? Because we deem them the three key ingredients to get in motion any type of circular systemic solution. They basically act as a container of knowledge which is needed to act upon what is produced along the journey. Okay, so starting from the engaging process, this concerns all the activities from the mapping and the design phase related to the stakeholder and the building of the circular economy team. So you will find again the previous activity from the first edition, like categorize and prioritize stakeholder, defining engagement mechanism. But this time, all the activity, all the knowledge that you are going to produce and the progress that you are going to achieve will end up within a specific document. This is the stakeholder engagement, the stakeholder coordination plan. The same goes for the planning process. So again, here, all the activities foreseen within the mapping and design phase, from the territorial metabolism analysis to the identification of circular action, to the definition of target and monitoring system, will end up within a structured document that we call it Circular Economy Action Plan. And the same goes for the financing process. Here again, mostly activity from the design phase related to life cycle costing, risk analysis, or business model definition will end up within the Circular Economy Investment Plan. So in this way, these three documents are not, let's say, end up output, but instead they should be updated as as activity will progress. So since the beginning, and this is very important because this figure might give the sensation that the plans come at the end, but it is not the case. Obviously, for like illustrative reason, we have to design somehow this figure, but through this circle, the inner, intermediate, and the outer circle of financing, planning, and engaging, we want to highlight that the activities since the beginning have this core objective: to feed the Circular Economy Investment Plan, Circular Action Plan, and Circular Coordination Plan. And then we have the new checklist. So in this case, we try to make it sharper compared to the previous one. And we also like twisted a little bit the reasoning of this checklist. So you can see a color-coded milestone. So the green circle represents milestone that should be achieved within the mapping phase. So for example, starting from the one at the top, key local actors mapped. And they have been also like clustered, grouped according to the final goal they should contribute to. So in the first instance, you can find those milestones converging towards stakeholder coordination plan, 1 milestone coming from the mapping phase and 3 milestones coming from the design phase, and so on. So then for the Circular Economy Action Plan, you will have a different milestone, and the same for the Circular Economy Investment Plan. So this checklist, our ambition at least would be that the use of this checklist is internal in order to help circular economy teams to assess progress of their circular systemic solution, identify potential missing steps or gaps, but also for external use, so that circular city and regions can communicate, for example, to investors or for looking for advisory services through a clear taxonomy, a clear language, as I was saying before, through this roadmap. And to make things even more operational, we provide one second. Okay, we provide a guiding question that should be useful to better understand whether a milestone is achieved or not. So in the case of key local actors mapped, you will find a couple of guiding questions to better understand whether this milestone is fulfilled or not. The same goes for milestone under the design activities. And finally, guiding question to better know whether the plans, the stakeholder coordination plan, circular economy action plan, and circular investment plan have been finalized, or in other words, the maturity of these plans. In principle, we hope that this would be would enhance or would foster the understanding of each cities and region journey, because we have seen that very often it was not very clear because it was based on a statement of cities and region rather than a clear key output that reflect the state of the art. Going further, let's go to the next slide. Okay, the new features. These are hands-on references. As I was saying before, we have, first of all, Did You Know box, which provide deepen overview on a specific aspect, mostly coming from the CCRI community. So in this case, for example, we provide an elaboration or a further information on the CCRI map and the CCRI working group working on specific thematic area within the Circular City and Region Coordination and Support Office. Then the other are the further insights. This box provide further references, not necessarily within the CCRI community, but perhaps also beyond those. Here in this case, you can see circular economy repository from other initiatives that might serve to identify circular action or other circular project. And finally, the good practices. Good practices are boxes that provide guidance or provide a clear example of practices, good practices implemented by cities and regions within the CCRI. And here in this case, you can see the example from Helsinki on the engagement of the civil society. Let's go to the next one. Regarding the new section, we expanded on the circular governance, or how to build a circular economy team. So in this figure, you can see that we have combined two different aspects of circular economy team. On the one hand, the nature of the stakeholder, which might be public institution like city and regional government. Then there is the private sector, local agency, civil society, and knowledge institution. These are like category of stakeholder, as you are well aware from the first edition of the CCRI methodology. But now we emphasize the role of this category, which are project owners, project developers, project advisor, and project investor, and finally project contributors. So we insist in having all these roles covered within the circular economy team, orchestrating the circular systemic solution, because it is key. And we provide also different organization schemes coming from the CCRI ecosystem that might work as an example. It might be institutional-led, whether the lead is taken from the municipality, for example, but it can be also a network circular economy team where responsibilities and duty are shared between a multi-faced stakeholder, including private one. So there is not, again, one size fits all organization, but it is important that for each circular systemic solution, all the roles are covered. Otherwise, it risks to stalling the progress and not move beyond, not move ahead. Another section we expanded is about the indicator. Let's wait a few seconds for the slide. Okay, and this was a section asked for by pilots and fellows. In this case, instead of providing yet another list of indicators, because we know very well that there are a lot of lists and indicators, we try to provide guidance on how to interpret them, whether they reflecting good or worse or poor performance. So what we did has been to take the most relevant indicator from the European Union Circular Economy Monitoring Framework and contextualize them through the European Union average and the target, legislative target and threshold target. So for each indicator, you can see now what is the European average and where we stand compared to the European Commission targets. For example, if we took the generation of municipal waste, we can see that currently the European average is more than 500 kilograms per capita, and it is expected to reach 350 kilograms by 2030. So this way, cities and regions that have this indicator in their system are can better understand whether they are on track or not, or they are performing well or not, across the main areas foreseen within the European Circular Economy Framework: production and consumption, waste management, secondary raw material, competitiveness, and resilience. So this is just a snapshot. You will find much more in the guide. And the last one, section in which we expanded, is on advisory services. So we mainly described and provided information on three main channels of this type of support. One is the project development assistance, the PDA, then the circular city advisory and the circular project advisory promoted by the Circular City Center program, the European Investment Bank, and finally the green assist. So these three types of advisory services are explained in detail, providing kind of expected support that cities and regions might look for, and the profile that are required to apply for this type of application. And we also provide, as an example to the right, some projects that get financed by this type of initiative. Obviously, in the methodology, you will also find example for the Circular City Advisory and the Green Assist program. So with this, I think that I arrived to the end. Just want to summarize. So yeah, to summarize, we know that circular transition are ongoing and not one-off project. And with the CCRI methodology, we aim to provide a flexible, adaptive framework, but it is not prescriptive nor mandatory. And it is also important that it is not alone, the CCRI methodology. It is embedded within the CCRI ecosystem. And as you will see in a few seconds, it is directly connected with other CCRI resources like the self-assessment tool. And last but not least, we really hope that this is not the final product, but it will be updated based on our regions and cities' experience and needs in the coming years. And yeah, this is all. And now I leave the floor to my colleague Yannis that will guide you through the use of the self-assessment tool.
Thank you, Marco. Hello, everyone. My name is Yannis. I'm a part of the CCRI CSO, as the colleagues who have spoken previously, and I've led the development of the self-assessment tool, which is, as Marco already explained, an integral part of the CCRI methodology. It has been launched already a couple of weeks back in July, and I'm happy to give a quick overview also in the context of this webinar here. So let me see if I can switch slides. Yes. So what is the self-assessment tool all about? Before we started the development of the self-assessment tool, we did an analysis on existing monitoring approaches, and it became clear that while most would agree that monitoring is an essential way to steer circular economy action, in practice, it provides a huge challenge for local practitioners, for city and region authorities, because, well, there are many reasons. There's a lack of standards and universal indicators for circular economy. Circular economy is an inherently complex concept that relates to many themes and different aspects and facets. Very importantly, there's a lack of data at local level. And as we all know, local practitioners often suffer from a lack of resources, so it's difficult to work with such a complex monitoring concept. We have studied existing approaches, and well, you can see cities and regions at different levels in monitoring. You can see many cities and regions that work within the circular economy within the circular economy context, but they're very well. They're not really focused on monitoring yet. While we see others that have some indicators in place, for example, that have set some targets, and we see only few that have established a full-fledged monitoring system already. So based on this finding, we developed a self-assessment tool, which is an Excel-based solution that is intuitive and easy to use, and it aims to assist you in setting up a monitoring approach. And well, I see that the slides, they jumped a bit, so sorry for this confusion. We can go back a bit, please. One further slide back. One more. Thank you. So as I said, the tool guides you through the process of monitoring. It aims to make things simpler and easier for you and to provide you with a guiding framework. This approach is very much in line with the overall approach of the CCRI methodology that Marco already explained. I'm sorry that the slides, they seem to move automatically. Sorry for that. I hope it's not too confusing. So let's take a quick look into the tool. It starts with one key step of a monitoring approach. Victoria, if you can try to stop it, that would be great. Thank you. So that we can switch manually. It guides you through the first essential step, which is the selection of indicators, and that's one of the core steps, perhaps. And for this, the tool provides two means. The first is it provides a comprehensive list of indicators. We've collected more than 500 different indicators that are already used in practice in circular economy. And we have selected roughly 100 indicators that we found to be the most relevant. And we provide you with comprehensive catalog that you can browse through with, by using various filtering options. And to pick the right indicators that correspond with the actions that you're implementing. As we know that this is still challenging, we've developed a further tool within the self-assessment tool that is a questionnaire that aims to help you in identifying suitable indicators. You can answer some easy questions on your specific approach, and based on your answers, the tool will recommend you 20 indicators, 10 output-related indicators, and 10 input-related indicators, so that you have at least a starting point to identify the right indicators for your assessment. Once you've done that and you've selected the right indicators, then you continue in the tool by defining targets for these specific indicators. You can also further specify indicators. You have also the opportunity to add your own indicators, and in that way, establish an indicator and monitoring system. Then, once you've defined the targets and target years and a base year, the tool asks you to regularly, we would suggest to do it once a year, to regularly enter your data. You can also do that directly in the tool. So the idea is that you once in a while, when you have new data, or at least once a year, go back, open the tool again, and then update it. And eventually, over time, in that way, you can then establish a monitoring approach. And then, as outputs are very important, especially then to further communicate your approach. The tool then provides a dashboard with several visuals based on the indicators and data that you inserted, and you can directly copy these graphics for other reports, for example, or for your communication purposes, also social media activities. Yes, that was a quick glance from my side on the self-assessment tool. If you're further interested, please check out the tool itself. There's also a quick guide that helps you working with the tool. And there has been a webinar from this July where we explain the tool in more detail, and hopefully also a bit less confusing with slides that don't jump. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Yanis and Marco and Pierre and everybody. And yes, apologies for slight technical issues with the slides there. As we say, all the slides will be shared after the event as well, so you'll be able to look back through those. So we're going to move on to the feedback and question and answer session of the webinar now. We have three specific pilot representatives with us in the audience. We have Francisco Carvalho from Guimarães, Jesus Diaz from Castilla y León, and Elmer Willems from Circular Flanders. I know there may be others in the audience as well. So we're going to invite the three of you to give us just 1 or 2 minutes on your specific feedback with the use of the methodology and potentially the self-assessment tool as well. Elmer, I know you've popped a question in the chat there as well, so you might want to touch on that and kind of post your question as part of your feedback as well. But Francisco, Jesus, we're happy to give the floor to you if you have your brief thoughts on use of the tool as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the explanation and the revised version of this CCRI methodology. And my short feedback, because it would take too long to discuss everything, would be that the development of this methodology was more or less simultaneously with the methodological backbone that we developed for the Flanders cities and regions. Because, of course, this topic was on the rise, it was important to work on it, and we saw a big deal of interest from cities. And we tried to support them from the regional administration with, getting the ideas right, getting the approach right. And we were lucky to see that the CCRI methodology was more or less in line with the things that we developed. All those elements of the approach of the methodology are also in our work, and we mirrored our work with the CCRI methodology to see if we didn't miss anything, or did we include everything. Although we made some different choices, I think the overall backbone or the overall structure is more or less the same. You want to support cities with developing ideas and the vision and the strategy. You want to have also plans and concrete projects, and you want some monitoring. And this is what we did in a trajectory with about 10 cities and smaller regions within the region of Flanders. So we tested this methodology, and we also gathered our experiences in a report. And I think in this report, in this methodological approach that we envisioned, we included more examples, more real-life examples, and also a lot of tools. That was also a bit based on the idea of the CCRI-M, where there were tools included to help them actually working with, for example, with stakeholder canvas or with the idea of lean startups, providing people not only the backbone of the methodology, but also the real tools that they can use when they are coming together and think about circular economy in their city. One aspect has also been, or one concern has been, how do they find support and financing? So this is something that we've been working on in the last year, because there have been elections in 2024 on the level of cities and municipalities. And we have been trying to work with them with the idea of how to include financial arguments in your new policy plans. And this was also mirrored by the CCRI methodology. So I think we can be grateful for this collaboration, more or less, or the fact that it is there, that it supports the work of cities and municipalities. But I think it's really necessary to have some kind of a translation and some kind of directed support for those cities and municipalities, because a lot of them do not have the time or the capacity to really work through a extensive methodology, and they just need to work with day-to-day problems and practices. But then you need an organization like Circular Flanders or other intermediaries to support them a bit and to take them on this journey. So this is my short response. I think this updated version really gives more food for thought and food for action. So that's really great. And it's indeed a complex question where the economy is still very much linear, and also governance is very much, and decision making is still very much linear. So this is a complex challenge that we need to address. And I think this methodology, and at least the updated version, is really helping us out.
Thank you, Elmar. That's really interesting insight. Francisco, Jesus, do you have any thoughts on your use of the methodology?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. So hi, good morning. It's good to see you all, and good to see Helmar again. It has been a long time since we met. Last time talking about this, we talked briefly about this this methodology when last time we were together, and actually from our side, as Elmar was mentioning, it was very interesting to use this approach in the city of Guimarães. It helped us to look into a specific target that we have in a very complex way, integrating all the aspects that can contribute for integrating a systemic solution in a municipality that is a small, medium-sized municipality. As Elmar was mentioning, sometimes you have this day-to-day work, and it's difficult to sit on a table then to think about how to implement this strategy and to call everyone that is needed to solve to transform a linear system to a circular system. But this methodology to us was very, very interesting since the very beginning, system mapping, since the mapping of stakeholders, how to engage all the stakeholders that we need to find a circular system. In our case, related with biowaste, it was the focus of our approach here in Guimarães, and how to call them to bring this circular innovation into valuable solutions for the territory. This, as I was following this new approach that you were mentioning here with the investment plan, with the financing part, and the action plan, that is also very interesting. Also to call for the responsibility of all the stakeholders. So what everyone needs to do to implement this in a certain way, so we can reach the overall vision and the overall goal, and working also through the targets that we have for specific actions and the outputs and KPIs that we want to achieve through the process, help us to put these goals, short-term, long-term, and long-term goals that can demonstrate how this systemic solution is working in our case, and how can we enhance and improve to achieve higher performance or to engage more people in a longer term. We also benefited from the specific support. For example, in our case, we're performing really well in the biowaste collection at urban in urban context, but we were missing some data in the rural context that could be helpful for us to, for example, to think about other valorization pathways. And all the support that we got through the CCRI methodology was also really good to help us to build this status, not only working in one of the pillars, but in the two pillars of rural and urban areas, so we can achieve bigger and higher performance. I think this new approach that was demonstrated here, it will enhance and facilitate also the work for the ones that are implementing the systemic solution, and it will be highly valuable. I agree with Elmar, at least specifically valuable for small and medium-sized cities that will need this fast but complex implementation method, but that support us in firstly in first steps that are the most important to get the vision. Yeah, I think that's it.
So that's fantastic. Jesus, would you like to give us your thoughts?
Hello, thank you very much. From our perspective in the region of Castilla y León, the methodology from CCRI has been very helpful and valuable for us. In fact, we have been implementing this methodology together with Guimarães in an Interreg project, checking this in several cities in Portugal and Spain, and getting the experience and lessons learned from all of these cities. But from our perspective, as we are a region, not a city, we have other additional comments to do. One of these is that for us, one of the most valuable proposal of the methodology was the structure of solutions following the priorities of the circular economy strategies. From the first, which is rethink, to the last, which is recycling. This is one of the most important issues for us because usually stakeholders, or including policymakers, doesn't understand this prioritization of circular economy strategies. They are usually think only in the last one, which is recycling, but not in the first one, which is rethink. So we have structured all our solutions for our circular systemic solution in the value chain of food, water, nutrient, following this hierarchy: first rethink and last recycling. And this was for us very helpful in the discussions we have with stakeholders and the policymakers. Other very useful question was about what you have mentioned is also included as most relevant in the new version, the guiding questions, which is very helpful to define the solutions and as each step of the methodology, mapping, implementing, including funding. But in the other hand, we consider that in the first version, funding step was not very good developed. It needed further implementation, and for us it's a good news that in the new version it is one of the most implemented sections of the methodology. So it's very interesting for us. And finally, concerning one part of the methodology, which is the monitoring indicators, maybe many of these indicators are more adequate for cities. We have a more direct contact with citizens and specific activities like repairing and something similar, but not so adapted to regions. And that's the question, because I think we need more options to have optional indicators for us, because we only can choose 10 indicators in the tool, but we need more specific indicators for the region. And in the other issue is that maybe the indicators are well adapted for global strategies or action plans, but not for a specific value chains. In our case, like we have developed an action plan for a specific value chain, we need optional indicators to monitor in our systemic solution. So this is one question to increase in the SAT, but the rest is was very helpful for us and very valuable for our strategy and for our circular systemic solution for the value chain. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesus. That was great. And again, Elmar and Francisco, for your thoughts. We're getting towards the end. There was one more question that came up in the chat while Marco was giving his presentation from Paiho Satu, around the clarification of roles for different actors, and Paiho gave the example of where some investments might be partly funded by public stakeholders, but there's also a role for private sector to bring in some funding to help the profitability and success of the kind of the solutions that are being looked at. So Marco, I think you did go on to talk about the clarification of roles in your governance section, but perhaps you could go into a little bit more detail for just a couple of minutes as to how you've gone about that in the development of methodology, and any other thoughts there.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Robert. Yeah, what we did in this first version, in this new version, is to explain also the role of stakeholder within the circular economy team, which go beyond the nature of the stakeholder itself. And we insist into the fact that, for example, as you said, private actor, depending on the territorial context, might serve different purpose. In some context, they also might lead circular systemic solution, whether they are the owner and also the implementer of the circular solution. But it really depends in the end on the territorial context. Sometimes they just collaborate, providing technological solution, but it is the municipality that coordinate and manage everything within the territorial, within the cities or the regions. What we try to do is to clarify the role that are required. So as it is needed, a project coordinator, which somehow orchestrate all the other figures. It is also needed a project founder, which eventually might be the private sector or in some cases also public funding. And then the project developers, those that have technological solution or mechanism to implement one or the other section, and then project advisors, those that based on sectoral experience might provide might provide consultancy services. And finally, the civil society that might be not as advisory, but a complementary stakeholder that should be engaged within the circular systemic solution. So again, we didn't give the receipt in the sense that the private investor should do this and this, but instead we provide like in a opera, the role that each type of stakeholder should behave within a circular systemic solution, differentiating between owner, project owner and coordinator, those providing finance, so funders, and developers. Next to that, the nature of stakeholder, which reflect the quadruple helix, civil society, public institution, civil academy, and the private sector. So in the mixing between these different two type perspective, it's really depending on the commitment of each one and the challenges and ambition of each local context. I don't know, Pierre, if you want to integrate somehow.
I mean, there is one key word we have used today several times, which is not prescriptive. The methodology is not prescriptive in the sense that we are not saying you must now contact with a private investor for this or for that. But remember, we have mentioned the Circular Economy Action Plan and the Circular Economy Investment Plan, which in themselves, they contemplate a lot of analysis of solutions that you may design and you may withdraw because your cost-benefit analysis or your business model assessment or your impact assessment shows you that this solution is worse than another one. You go and deepen the other solution, and while you do that, you're also evaluating what kind of investments, capital investment or other investments will be needed, in which time they will be needed, and what will be the necessary additional actions to put in place so that this funding can be possible. So little by little, what we do provide is, let's say, a methodology and suggested actions that should bring you as actors implementing the solutions or designing the solutions and say, okay, if I have come to this point where I am now, I see that I have to choose in terms of funding option A, a private funder with a certain system of funding, or a public funding for another purpose. So again, this is where the methodology is about, and this is also a little bit the conclusions I wanted to make to this day of today, listening to what Elmar has said about, let's say, transposing the methodology, the CCRI methodology, to the local context, which will always be specific. We cannot, of course, contemplate all the different scenarios that can happen on the ground because sectors are different, actors are different, even the regulation may be different. So there will always need to be this final step of adapting what is generic, what we provide in the methodology, until a very advanced stage, and then what will be applied at the local level with the actors that have to come to an agreement among them to say, okay, let's go for this or let's go for that. We do not say what has to be done in this last step, but we hope that what will be provided as results of several assessment iterations and evaluation iterations that we suggest in the methodology, that this last step can be done. Another example was the one mentioned by Jesus, and in Castilla y León, indeed, the self-assessment tool does not contemplate 5,000 indicators for 20 different value chains, but it has an approach on how to do the process of indicator selection, depending on what kind of goals you are pursuing. Now, having said that, again, there is a work of contextualization to be made. Maybe now the tool can be improved. It could be improved in terms of adding more new indicators. Yes, that is certainly a way of improvement, but still, I also believe that, again, the tool provides, let's say, the conceptual approach to elaborate a decent and solid monitoring framework for monitoring both impact and the progress of your project with stakeholder engagement and so on and so forth. So having said that, and if you allow me to do some conclusions, Robert, I would say that all this teaches us that the methodology has to find this balance between being useful. We had some feedback that it was, so we are happy to hear that. But we are aware that there is this last miles to be done, context-specific integration, and last adaptations that will still need to be done in the future. So, as you know, the CSRI CSO first edition will be ending at the end of this year. It will be continued with a new generation. And in this one, I guess that something like the CCRI methodology will be a pillar and will still need, as we have said several times today, will need to be updated with this feedback that we receive, with the experience of pilots and others, and regions implementing their circular systemic solutions, because this is really where good practices, knowledge, things to be done, things to be improved can be, let's say, identified, taken into consideration, and then eventually integrated in an updated, again, methodology, always trying to find this balance between being generic enough but clear enough on steps to do, so that with several iterations you nail it down at the end, and you can say, okay, the methodology helped us to steer our progress, but we need, let's say, the last local support, maybe with local experts, maybe with a PDA, maybe with a Green Assist type assistance, or with an EIB C3 type of assistance to make this last, let's say, step and really start to implement things on the ground. So these were my concluding remarks. I see we have almost kept the time.
Almost.
So that's it from my point. If you want to say a few concluding words also, Robert. No.
Yes, thank you, Pierre, and thank you to Marco and Yanis as well for your presentations. Done a fantastic job, and a big thank you to our guest speakers as well, obviously from the pilots, and to all of you in the audience for your engagement. Hopefully the webinar's met your expectations. A huge thank you also to all of our behind the scenes team at CCRI, CSO, Victoria and team for organising and keeping everything on track for us. And please do remember that we'll send a follow-up email to the event where we'll share some of the relevant information and documents, and there'll be a link to a feedback survey as well there, so that you can let us know how this went for you, and whether you found it useful in any kind of thoughts as well. And yeah, that's all from us. Thank you again for everybody's attention this morning, and have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.